That signpost is supposed to read Charleville. It's a very poor shot of the signpost, but nevertheless we're in Charleville now. A shot of the Charleville post office. Quite neat post office. Some of the main streets in Charleville. Note how well, nice, neat, clean, well kept. We stayed over in Charleville at a friend's place. Here we have our friend Mrs. Moore and her granddaughter. On the left of the car is one of her sons, Colin. One of the many jobs we done on this trip was to put out Signs of the Times, a missionary magazine, in most of the mailboxes along the way as we spread on our way. It is rather fascinating to hit this tar road way up north, out in this open country. From Charleville we headed towards Blackhall, and this is the road. This boulder was very interesting. It carried some potch, which shows that OPAL was in the vicinity at one time. 63 miles to Blackhall. So on we speed towards Blackhall. In the township of Blackhall now, just a little town, one of those country places, quite neat. We have travelled west from Blackhall now a considerable distance, and we're on a friend's property, Highland Downs. Here's one. Bauer. Here's one of the owners. Bill Bauer, the man on the left there, is another owner of the property. This is quite a large property, some hundreds of square miles. One of our truck drivers here, or vehicle drivers, doing a little exercise, digging a boulder out of the side of the mountain. This country here produced some nice opal, and many specimens and pieces of colour are to be found laying around the bottom of the mountain. Here everybody is having a little speck, most found colour. A close look at the ground can see broken bits of boulder which have been broken by miners or weathered out of the hill. There's very good potential in this area, and I believe there is some good opal here to be got. It was not an easy place to get into. We couldn't get up there with our vehicle, so they took us out in the Toyota. The mine is only about 4 miles from the homestead, but as you can see, this four-wheel drive type of vehicle is necessary to get over some of these bad crossings to get up into the area. Like all good things, our trip and visit to this area came to an end, so here we are saying goodbye to our friends, and once again we're on our way. This is just one or two of the scenes of the opal-bearing country in this area. This is very close to Urraca, on the Urraca-Blackhall Road. Opal is generally found at the foot of these mountains or in the mountains themselves, rarely out on the flat country in this particular area. As we burn up the road, we look out the windscreen of the car many lonely miles. Junda we're heading for, so there was the turn off to Junda. Here we see on the way two very rare birds today, the plain turkey. Most all have heard of the Barcoo River, so here we have the famous Barcoo River. This is a water hole on part 2, about a half a mile long. How deep, I do not know. But it was a very interesting scene, and here we have one of the vehicle drivers can have a little bit of a wash, sprinkle his face to freshen up after a long driving. And she done a wonderful job. The Hotel Junda. Junda is only a little place. We fill up with petrol and on our way again. Burning up the desert road as we head on now towards the Warburton district. Down over a ridge we go, a red, stony country, but this is the opal-bearing country of Queensland. Very interesting country. We run on to the old lonely windmill, pumping water away there for the stock into that earthen tank behind it. The blades in that mill would possibly be 30 foot across, a majestic sight standing out in the barren country. Just a few of the scenes up on the Warburton run of the ranges. These are the ranges that carry the opal. This country is very dry at the moment, but in good seasons is beautiful and green. This is Mount Felix. The right time of the day, the sun at the right angle, this is a beautiful scene. Stands out like a neon light, as a city dweller would say, on this great open country. Please read the warning notices when you enter this country. We have picked up a guide here, a very good friend of ours, Mr. Fred Craig. He's a dogger in this area, commonly called a dingo catcher to those who are not acquainted with the term. Also, an opal miner of many years of experience. He has taken us out now into the hills to a place known as Ward's Mine. Here we are at the old miners' camp, specking away. We did find some lovely pieces of colour here this day. Some of them was quite cuttable and did show that beautiful material came from this area. From the camp over onto the mines we go, having quite a noodle. We found quite a bit of material at the mine. There was colour everywhere and everyone enjoyed themselves. We found a few pounds of matrix, and our guide also found some, which we purchased from him after the day was over. But this country is very interesting. We noticed that the matrix is found down on the low country, down in the flattish type of areas. Very unlike the boulder opal, its brother, which is usually found on higher levels, particularly on the foot of the jump-ups as it's termed, or up in the mountains themselves. This country is very dry, very barren, very desolate and very arid. And it's very risky to enter this country without a guide unless you know the area well. One of the vehicles here is poking along a road put in by oil borers. The oil boys have been out in this area prospecting and opened the country up a little. This is one of the ridges, one of the jump-ups, very typical of opal country in Queensland. Here's another view. Gives you some idea what the opal-bearing country looks like close up in Queensland. You'll notice now that we have left the beaten track and our guide has taken us into a hidden mine. Notice, no road, we're making our own track. This is known as the Thornton's Boulder Mine. And of course, without a guide, one could never find it. Very interesting country here from the opal miner's point of view. after quite a noodle around here. We didn't find a great lot of colour, as on most boulder shows you do not. One has to find the old camps to find the colour, as they usually took the boulders home to camp and opened them at their leisure. But an extensive amount of work has been done here, which is a sign that some good opal has been produced out of the area. It's very, very risky to try and come out into this country by yourself unless you have a guide or unless you know the area well, as it is very easy to perish. Water is an extreme commodity, rarer than opal. We run onto an emu here on a net and boundary fence. You had a few chicks, as you can see on the right-hand side there. Somehow some got through the fence, and Mummy Emu was sure stirred up. He was going to have a go at us, so we wound the windows of our car up. Back at our friend's camp, here he is. Now, Mr. Fred Craig, he's going to show us a piece of boulder opal and a piece of matrix. This is the piece of boulder opal, come from a mine his father worked many years ago, around the turn of the century. I myself thought, at close examination, the quality was equal to the piece of black opal we've seen from Lightning Ridge. Of course, like all opals, it did not photograph well in the sunlight. This is a magnificent piece of black matrix, possibly the best piece I've ever seen and ever hoped to see. I couldn't value it. It's one of those pieces you don't value, but the quality I've never seen. It's extremely close to black opal, except for a few little pieces of rock on the face. This gentleman always makes us at home and very welcome, and it's a pleasure to meet with him. He tells us many stories of the old days of the opal mine. Now he's taken us out into the hills where we can't take the Holden, but the combi can go. We've got to get through a net and fence, so we undo the fence to let the vehicle through. Note that the oil boys have been here also, but we don't have their roads very long. We leave them and wander off into the hills. One must always do a fence up when you come through in this country. Make sure it is stock-proof and dog-proof, or dingo as we may term it. Some tank sinkers who was working in the district went over to an old matrix mine and had a day or two and ripped it about. They got a bit of matrix. They certainly made a mess of the mine. We can see here the amount of work they done in the 2 or 3 days is amazing what bulldozers can do. There's some beautiful pieces of colour picked up here. He has, over the past, mined some lovely material from this area. Note how dry and hard the level is in Queensland, but this is typical of most shallow country. Our guides tell us of the earlier days here when beautiful materials were obtained here. He had seen a lot of it. And here we are discussing possibilities of some country left underfoot, looking at the levels and the stratas. So we move on now. This is just one of the many, many bad crossings we had to go over with the combi. Poor old combi, her first maiden voyage. We had a little trouble in this gully. Noticed the back wheel spinning on the other side, but after a little perseverance, no problems, and out she went. Just just one of the many mines he took us to, isolated throughout the hills, dry and barren country, but magnificent pieces of colour laying around. This was a chipping heap we'd found here, and some magnificent pieces of colour come out of it. Of course, over the many years, decades, it was covered over with soil, and we had to rake through the dirt, as we can see here, Ted digging into the dirt and finding the pieces buried. Just how long ago these workings were first started, no one knows, but we do know those around before the turn of the century. It was our friend's, our guide's father, I should say, who discovered many of the mines in this particular country. His name was Fred Craig. He was the man that discovered Opalton, which was to produce some fabulous opal years later. Spinifex is a nuisance, of course, throughout the land, and nobody hesitates to drop a match into it. So our guide here just gives us a demonstration of what can happen in the big bunches of spinifex.
Follow after with a hickory blue, the pony being rather shy when sitting by a blue-tail fly. Jimmy crack corn and I don't care, Jimmy crack corn and I don't care, Jimmy crack corn and I don't care, my master's gone away. One day he ride around the farm, the flies...
Even though the spinifex may look green, it burns very, very freely.
On the side, the devil takes the blue-tail fly. Jimmy crack corn and I don't care, Jimmy crack corn and I don't care, Jimmy crack corn and I don't care, my master's gone away. The pony run, he jumped, he bit, he threw my master in the ditch. He died and the jury wondered why. The verdict was the blue-tail fly.
Ted doing a little showing off here. He tried to show us just how close he could go to this immense heat of the fire. He did stand it for a little while.
They lay him under a cinnamon tree. His epitaph is there.
Just another one of the many bad crossings we had to go over. There's no doubt about these VWs. They have a tremendous advantage over most ordinary drive vehicles in this country because of their very high ground clearance.
I'm going down the road feeling bad. I'm going down the road feeling bad. I'm going down the road feeling bad. I ain't going to be treated this way.
We moved on now to some old mines known as quartz pot. Now in Queensland there are two areas of country called quartz pot. This is the northern quartz pot mines, situated roughly southwest of Longreach. The other quartz pot mines are in the Arramanga district, some 200 or 300 miles south of here. Plenty of potch and colour laying around here. Our bulldozer boys had been here and pushed one of the old mines about a bit, but I don't think I've seen so much potch and colour, sand shot of course, laying about in great lumps, ounces of it.
Down the road feeling bad. I'm going down the road feeling bad. I ain't going to be treated this way.
We have moved on now to another mine. This was known as the Fred Craig mine, known after this gentleman's father who found it before the turn of the century. His father produced some beautiful boulder opal from this mine. Our guide had shown a friend where it was and told him all about it, and they put a bulldozer in on it and apparently got quite a lot of lovely opal from here. We moved on now to another area far away, and we found some men actually working in this very barren country. Here we have Paddy King, a man standing in front of the combi. Paddy is digging a little bit of a shallow hole here on a little traces, but to date has produced very little. One boulder carrying some colour.
when I see them. My heart tells me that I love you more than all the little pearly shells.
We had a lovely time with Paddy and his mate. We brought a bit of material that they had produced. We made some good friends here. They made us quite welcome. All around these hills was many mines of good production. We've moved over to another area now. This is known as the Minorichi Mine, a very famous mine which was discovered by our guide's father in the year 1897. George Craig, his father, got some magnificent opal from this area. He found it one day while riding on horseback, probably working in the country. I don't know that particular part of the story, but our guide tells us the opal was breaking out on the surface, and of course they followed it down. He tells us that they got a tremendous amount of opal here. One parcel alone filled the legs of an old dungaree pants. He tells us they tied it over the saddle of a horse and rode to Opalton with it and sold it to the opal buyers. Magnificent sandstone opal. Just around here is where the bulk of the opal come from, very shallow country, 3 or 4 foot deep. And our guide informs us that there's still possibilities way to the left-hand side there of the run continuing. For the want of work, no one knows. Well, our safari up north is over, so we head south towards the Aramanga district. And as we move along, we pass Mount Felix through the open country. Back on the open road, we see the dry, barren country. For the want of water, this country can produce beautiful grass under the right conditions. We pass native companions on the way, the brolga, a very interesting bird. Like all trips that had its problems, here we put a stone through the petrol tank and was a little lucky. We had a little bit of material with this plastic blonde to fix it up. Fascinating way out in this country to have a magnificent tar road. This is the beef road which runs from Windsor to Quilby. Very, very interesting. This is the place for those young lads with their speed cars, their Jags, to try them out. No one to hurt, only themselves. 156 mile of it. Mile after mile, we burn up the tar as we slip through this beautiful red country. This country is very interesting. Here we see sand dunes, out in grey soil, sticking out like monuments, all by themselves. Here's one, closer up, taken out the side of the car, surrounded by grey soil. And at night time we camp and light our old fire out the famous old gidgee log. Here we see the gidgee which burns with immense heat and very slow burner. The road off to Quilby and Aramanga. We leave the tar road here and head out to Aramanga, 43 miles. From there we go out to the famous old opal mines. Here's a beautiful rock hole on the road out. We had to stop and have a look at it. Magnificent scenery. Out at the mines, here's some recent workings here. This work has been done by machinery. You can see the marks there, a backloader and digger. A boulder mine production, we don't know really what came out of it. We know that some nice opal came out, but just how much, we don't know. Here we see Ted walking around the old workings. Now up on top of the mountain, looking down into the old workings. Now we move over to the Little Wonder Mine. This mine is one of the mines that produced a beautiful opal which made the Australian opal famous. Opal from this mine and from the Stony Creek mines were the opal to first open up the way for a new industry in Australia. A view through the mulga trees of the dumps at the Little Wonder. Here we see Ted up on top of one of the old shafts, showing off a bit for the cameraman. Here's one of the drives into the mine, well and truly mollicked up now. Tremendous amount of work has been done here. This was found way back somewhere around the 1880s by a man named Johnson. He sold his first parcel for £1,000 from this mine to our first opal dealer, Tully Wollaston, the man who made all the Australian opal famous. He's the man that put Lightning Ridge, White Cliffs, South Australia and Queensland opal on the market. They also brought the mine from Johnson and put a man in charge by the name of Bridle, and a tremendous amount of work in this area. Now this is top rock country here after a storm. We see here that the rock holes in the top rock country has trapped the water, beautiful crystal clear water, and so we replenish our supplies. On the track again, late in the evening, moving back now towards Aramanga. Very interesting. We've all heard of the flying saucers. Well, here's the man from Mars out of one. This intrigued us. Whoops, steady boy, don't pull the aerial off it with the antenna. This is the mailbox at Naretha Station, about 30 miles from Quilpie. And I suppose many, many people have pulled up and photographed this mailbox. So unique. Now back on the tar road and into Quilpie we come. The township of Quilpie, a very important one in the cattle industry. This is the end of the railway line from Brisbane, and a tremendous amount of cattle are railed from here to Brisbane from this particular area, mainly from the channel countries around Windora, hence that big tar road we've just seen, the beef road, to truck the cattle into the railhead. Quilpie Post Office, quite nice and neat.
And give him his plate, and pass the bottle when he got dry.
Some opal mines in the vicinity. Here we visited some miners. They had a little opal to show us. We see some opal being examined there now. The buyer in the centre in the dark clothes. A miner with a yellow cap on the right-hand side, and the two boys in the foreground are just looking on.
The pony being rather shy when bitten by a blue-tailed fly. Jimmy crack corn and I don't care. Jimmy crack corn and I don't care. Jimmy crack corn.
Opal must be studied very closely when purchasing, as two pieces are never alike. Now we're on another area. This is known as the Red Show. From where the boys are standing, some magnificent opal was produced way back about 1928. In fact, a 28-pound piece of pipe opal was produced here. Precious opal today would possibly be worth £100,000.
The pony run, he jumped, he bit. He threw my master in the pit.
We move from the Red Show now over to the Hayricks, which is very close. This is a very famous old mine, found first by Joe Kinnear in 1929 and worked up till about 1960, roughly. This mine produced some of the most beautiful opal ever found in Queensland, a great percentage of it being black. There's the dump, some 70 foot high, and in its heyday, a semi-trailer could be backed around on top of it. There's approximately 1 mile of tunnels in this mine, many drives all hooked up together. The mountain rises for approximately 200 feet, and the mine is about 70 foot up the side. Conditions now have all deteriorated since work has ceased. Here we see two of the boys walking around on top of the dump. In the background on the right we see the old cutting shed, and in the left we see the hut which is built in under the mountain. Some of the old gear that's left around the place since work ceased. The only tunnel which is accessible to the mine now and in a very dangerous condition. The boys are going to have a little sticky here to see what it's like.
I'm going where the water tastes like wine.
Inside the mine, not going to venture too far, as things are in a very bad condition. See a bit of the roof on the floor behind them.
I'm going where the climate suits my clothes. I'm going where the climate suits my clothes. I'm going where the climate suits my clothes.
A general inspection by the boys, looking over the whole workings now. Still on top of the dump, mountain rising up the other side. A monument to the men at work this mine, there's no doubt. We believe it to be the biggest opal mine in Australia.
I ain't gonna be seen with this away.
is possible at today's prices that this mine would have produced over £1 million worth of opal. But unfortunately, most of the opal was mined during the Depression and was sold for as low as £50 per kerosene case, that is 8 gallons. After leaving the Hayricks, we head down south again towards Yulo and Cunnamulla. On the way down, we visit the Yowie opal fields. Here we are on our way down to the Yowie now. This is where we believe the Star of Bethlehem was found, the most famous opal.
Upon the beach, I've got a kiss for you, and I've got more left.
This part of the trip had its moments, as a week or two before there had been a considerable amount of rain, and we had a few sticky moments getting through some of these patches. No traffic comes down here, or very little, and so there's tremendous risk if we get bogged and no one to help you out. But the old vehicle, she got through okay. Here's another go. There's about 30 or 40 mile of road here, which is only a track through the hills, and if you don't know it, you can really get oneself into trouble. Cunnamulla by Yulo, we can see. Now in the bull dust now, out of the wet country into the bull dust and very close to the Yowie opal fields. In fact, we've left the main track and here we are on Mooga Station. We turn off here left down onto the Yowie fields, which is about 6 miles. On the field now and at one of the miners' camps. Down a mine and looking up as one of the miners climb up the steps in his shaft some 40 foot above. Very interesting shot. On top of the same mine, the miner shows us how he pulls his own dirt. We see him here letting the bucket down. The bucket is filled below, usually by himself when there's no one to help him. Climbs back up the shaft and ties his steel rope onto the front of his vehicle and slowly backs back. He used to got a log behind the back wheel, and he backs onto the log and he knows he's at the right distance. And we see him pull up a 24-gallon bucket. A hard way of doing it, to climb up and down a 40-foot shaft, but no other way can a man pull it by himself in this country. The miner is Ted Pigram. We know this gentleman very well, quite a nice man, and here he is showing us some of his recent mining efforts. A nice little piece of opal there in the boulder. Here's a beautiful boulder specimen. Lovely piece of opal. Lovely green. Yes, a beautiful piece of opal. Some more pieces of boulder here. Lovely specimens of boulder opal. Lovely green material, which will cut into nice stones. We can see how the opal is on the rock, and when it's cut, there's a face of opal with the rock on the back. Here Ted Pigram, the miner, on the right, is talking with the dealer now, and they're discussing prices. Some agreement has been reached. See the dealer handing over the money to the miner. And we're in the country now where a signature is good as a handshake. Here's one of the many ingenious bits of machinery we see around opal fields today. This is used for separating the fine material from the rough material. The men are going through the old dumps looking for the matrix and chips of opal which have been left by the miner some 50 years ago. Yes, this is the Yowie field, about 40 to 60 miles northwest of Yulo. Give her a bit of herbs, mate, that's it. Smoke and dust and away he goes. Well, friends, this is just somewhere about the end of our film now, even though we're not back from where we started. We do hope that you enjoyed our little trip around the opal fields in Western Queensland. We have seen what some of the arid country these men live under and work under.